This is the Moonlight Graham Show, a freewheeling conversation with the role players, the underdogs, and guys with flat-out great stories in sports.
Hello and welcome back to the Moonlight Graham Show, where we celebrate the role players, the underdogs, and the great stories in sports. And unfortunately, what we're talking about today is one of the craziest sports records that I've ever seen in my lifetime, and frankly, I've been a witness to most of it, because my Minnesota Twins are back in the playoffs. And currently, they are in the midst of the longest postseason losing streak in American professional sports history. They've lost 18 games in a row in a record, a streak that is 19 years going, 8 postseason appearances. It's pretty remarkable how this is even possible for them to lose 18 straight games. But we're talking, there's never been a postseason streak they've lost this many games in professional basketball, professional baseball, football, hockey, 18 games. I think the next longest losing streak is like the Detroit Pistons in the NBA, which at one point had lost 14 straight postseason games. The Twins have lost 4 more than that. And so that's what we're talking about here on the podcast today, is this 18-game losing streak, which, you know, as a Twins fan, I'm a lifelong Twins fan, I have been cheering for the Twins this entire streak. And it really started to come into fruition and almost become a punchline, a joke, like 13 years ago in 2010, when they were in the midst of losing to the Yankees, what it felt like at that point every year. And since that time, that was 13 years ago, but it was also 6 years into the streak. But we're not talking about like just bad baseball, bad Twins teams. Obviously, a lot of these teams have had to be good in order to win the AL Central, in order to make the playoffs. And amongst those Twins teams, we're talking about Cy Young Award winners, MVPs, batting champions, Hall of Fame players like Johan Santana, Joe Mauer, Justin Morneau, Jim Thome, Torii Hunter, Joe Nathan. Great baseball players, great teams. The Twins have had some great teams during this run. But they've lost 18 in a row. 13 of those to the Yankees, 2 to the Astros, 3 to the Oakland A's. And here we are in the postseason again, 2023. And hopefully this week we break the streak. So that's what we're talking about on the podcast today. I hope by the end of this episode, you become a Twins fan and you are cheering for my Minnesota Twins at the end of this episode. Have a great week, Moonlighters. Love you. Moonlighters, are you or someone you know moving down to Kansas City? Well, if you are, the one realtor that we trust and yet you need to be calling is the great Brian Sandvig. As you well know, Brian Sandvig is our producer here on the podcast, and there is not a better residential real estate advisor down in the Kansas City marketplace than Brian Sandvig. Call Brian Sandvig, shoot him a text. Hey, DM us on social media. We'll get you connected with Brian if you can't find him on all the socials, but he is there and he is active, and he is your Kansas City realtor, so give him a call. So this postseason losing streak started way back in 2004. And to go into the Wayback Machine and think about where the Twins were at in 2004, this was right smack dab in the prime of those great Twins teams in the early 2000s. Like you had a young Joe Mauer, you had a young Justin Morneau, you had Johan Santana winning his first Cy Young in 2004. You had Torii Hunter, Michael Kadire, Joe Nathan. These teams were loaded. They had the Piranhas, right? So they had those scrappy middle infielders that nobody could get out and were always just great spark plugs. So that 2004 team was an awesome team. But right at the other side of this, that was before MLB had expanded the postseason, expanded the wild card. So it seemed like every year the Twins were running up against the New York Yankees. So back in 2004, Johan Santana, best pitcher on the planet, is facing the Yankees in Game 1 of the ALDS. Johan Santana actually goes out and wins against the Yankees. So that was the last time. October 12th, I think, of 2004 was the last Twins victory, 19 years ago. After that, the next night, the Twins were going up to go 2-0 in Yankee Stadium against the Yankees. I mean, I guess maybe to go back to that Game 1 win, just to paint a picture of how old that was, how long ago that was. Joe Nathan got the save, Johan Santana got the win, and the last out of the game was made by Ruben Sierra. I mean, Ruben Sierra played in the 1980s, and he was the last out made in the last Twins postseason victory. So the next night, the Twins are playing the Yankees. They're trying to go up 2-0. They've got all the momentum. They've got a great team. They're up in the ninth inning. And they blow it. And the game goes into extra innings, and they end up losing in the 12th inning. In the 12th inning of that game in Yankee Stadium, actually top of the 12th, Torii Hunter, number 48, one of the great Twins, one of the great baseball characters ever, hits a go-ahead homer for the Twins. And I remember just absolutely freaking out, thinking, we're going up 2-0 here. And then Joe Nathan, who was, an awesome Hall of Fame closer for us, but it seemed like they always stretched him out. He was in his third inning of relief in the 12th, and he ends up blowing it in his third inning of relief, which, I give him a little bit of a pass for, because you'd never see a closer going 3 innings nowadays. And so he ends up blowing it, gives up a home run, and then a sacrifice fly. Jeter scored to end the game. And that was the start of this postseason losing streak. The next game, game 3, Yankees win 8-4, and then the deciding game, Yankees won 6-5. Once again, the Twins were up 5-1 late in that game. Lou Ford had a bases clearing double to put the Twins up 5-1. Twins the bullpen blows it. We end up losing 6-5 and get beat by the Yankees 3-1 in that series. So the Twins won game 1, lost 3 in a row to the Yankees, and thus started this streak. So that was 2004. In 2006, it was much the same team for the Twins. So once again, you had Johan Santana, who had won the Cy Young that year. You had Francisco Liriano was on the team at that point. You had Morneau. I think it was Morneau's MVP season at that point. Hunter, Kadire, all the guys. This year, instead of playing the Yankees, they play the A's. But that was those great Moneyball A's teams. And game 1, you'd think Johan Santana on the mound. Well, they're facing, I don't know, I didn't look up the box score, but probably faced, Zito or Hudson or Mulder at that point. Twins lost 3-2 in a close game. Next game, the series kind of got progressively worse. Game 1, we were up the majority of the game, lost 3-2 to the A's. Game 2, A's won 5-2. Game 3, A's won 8-3. The big 3 of the A's at that time was awesome, that series against the Twins, and swept the Twins 3-2, 5-2, 8-3, and 0-6. So now the losing streak's at 6 games. A couple years off from the playoffs, they get back in 2009. In 2009, you forget that the Twins hadn't won a postseason game, because if you remember from back in that year, it was an awesome way, one of the best regular season endings I can ever remember, because the Twins were actually down 4 games to the Detroit Tigers in the last week of the season. And they ended the season with a 4-game split set against the Tigers. So they're playing the Tigers. They're down 4 games. They have to sweep the Tigers to get to a game 163. And sure enough, they swept the Tigers in the series to end the season, which meant they needed a 1-game, 163rd game playoff. And it was one of the great 163rd games ever. I was, who was the second baseman at that time? I wish I could remember. At the top of my head. Anyway, he was a great second baseman for the Twins and had a huge hit in the game. The Twins walk off the 163rd game to make the playoffs. And most Twins fans remember that game because it felt like a playoff game, even though it wasn't. So in the midst of that, we have that game 163 that got us to the playoffs. So the Twins are riding high, carrying in a 5-game winning streak to the postseason. But once again, they got to face the Yankees. And so 2009, they lose 7-2 to the Yankees in game 1. The second game, they're up 3-1 in the 9th inning. Once again, Joe Nathan blows it again. He gave up a Hideki Matsui home run and then a Jeter hit to lose 4-3. And then in the third game, they lose 4-1. Joe Mauer had an RBI double that scored a run, the only run for the Twins that game. So now the streak's at 9. 6 of those to the Yankees, 3 of them to the A's. 2010, back in the postseason. Once again, the Yankees again. 6-4 loss in game 1. 5-2 loss to the Yankees in game 2. The Twins led 2-0 in the 7th of that one. And then game 3, they lost 6-1. So now the streak's at 12, right? So we've had 6 in a row to the Yankees. Before that, it was 3 to the A's. Before that, it was 3 to the Yankees. So then 2019 was our next postseason appearance. At that point, I missed one. 2017 was actually the wild card game. So 2017, was the Yankees once again in a 1-game wild card. And I remember this one well because it was like a Wednesday night, Thursday night game, middle of the week. Luis Severino was starting for the Yankees. The Twins actually go up with 2 home runs in the first. I remember Eddie Rosario hit one of them. I think Brian Dozier hit the other one. So we're up 3-0 in the first inning. We end up going up 4-0 in the second. I remember even though we were up 4-0, we had the bases loaded in both innings, and it could have been much worse. And sure enough, we don't capitalize on those. We scored early, but we didn't score late and end up losing 8-4 to the Yankees again. So that was 17. In 2019, the Twins go back. This was the Bomba squad. So at that point, the Twins hit 307 home runs for the most home runs ever hit by a team. It was one of those Nelson Cruz teams, tons of home runs, tons of strikeouts. And we run into the Yankees in 2019, lost game 1, 10-4, lost game 2, 8-2, lost game 3, 5-1. Never really had a chance. So at that point, the losing streak is 16 games, 13 of which are to the Yankees. And it's ugly. It's ugly at this point. You had never seen anything quite like it. I think the previous longest postseason losing streak ever was 14 games. It was the Detroit Pistons, not even in baseball. And if you think about it, like the amount of years, the amount of good teams you have to make the playoffs, and every one of these is a series, and you're losing every one of them in kind of heartbreaking fashion. It's been rough. And so the jury had been out really after the 2010 series against the Yankees, where at that point, they had lost 12 in a row. A lot of it was to the Yankees. And here we are 11 years later, actually 13 years later from 2010, and the streak is still going. And the Twins have been to the playoffs 4 more times. This is the 4th time since then that they've gone, and they still haven't won a game. So 2020, their last appearance was against the Astros, and that was one of those weird COVID years. The Astros were really good. That was one of the years that they won it. They had, Correa and Altuve. It was just a great pitching team as well. Twins actually scored early in game 1 against the Astros. They led 1-0 into the 7th. They ended up having a couple of defensive miscues. Jorge Polanco, I'm looking at you. End up losing game 1, 4-1. End up losing game 2, 3-1. And just really disheartening. That was a disheartening series for me because it wasn't the Yankees. We thought, hey, finally, we're not getting the Yankees. We're going to get the monkey off of our back here. And now the streak is up to 18 in a row. 18 in a row. The playoffs start tomorrow, or I'm recording this on Monday night, so they start today if you're listening to this on Tuesday. And I'm on pins and needles. This is, for me, the Twins are my team. I know a lot of folks say, hey, like I'm a Chiefs fan. If the Chiefs ever won in the Super Bowl, like that kind of thing, or if the Hawkeyes ever won the national championship, that kind of thing. For me, it's the Twins. I was alive for 87, although I was 1 year old. I was alive for 91. I kind of remember 91. But in my adulthood, since I've really been a Twins fan, the Twins have never even made the World Series. And so I don't really know what I would do if they got to, it's not like I would, do anything crazy, but this is the team that I want to see do it. So we've got the Blue Jays. Kind of unexpected. I was thinking we were going to have the Astros or the Rangers. We got the Blue Jays. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're playing kind of the mid-afternoon game every one of those days. We kind of expected that. The Twins are kind of baked into that time slot. And funny enough, I'm traveling for work this week. And guess where I'm traveling? I'm traveling to Toronto. So Tuesday, I'm flying from Des Moines to Detroit to Toronto. I land in Toronto right around game time. So I'll land, the first pitch is at 4:38 Eastern time. I'll land about 20 minutes after that. I got to go through customs. I got to get in an Uber to my hotel. I got to get checked into my hotel. I'm guessing I'll get into my hotel room around 6 o'clock. So probably about the 5th inning. Hopefully during that time, I can pull up the game somehow on my phone and follow it along. Hopefully watch it, but probably follow it along. But I'm going to be on pins and needles. So I'll be watching it from Toronto. Game 2 will be the reason I'm going to Toronto is I have business meetings the next day. And it's not like meetings where I can sit in the back of the room and like have the game on my phone while pretending to pay attention. I'm actually leading these meetings. So I can't even follow the game while I'm leading the meetings because I got to lead the meetings. So that's going to be hard. I don't know exactly how I'm going to handle that yet. And then the next day on Thursday, I fly back from Toronto at 12:30. I'll get into Des Moines around 5, which will mean I'll get back to my house once again in like the 5th or 6th inning. So as much as I hate this, that I got to travel for work, it might be a good thing for me to not have to sweat it out through every pitch of the game, but hopefully I'll be able to watch as much of it as I can. But it's kind of remarkable. The longest postseason losing streak in sports history, I think I've watched probably not all, but parts of every one of those games. And in the midst of all this, I should say it's an 18-game postseason losing streak, but the last game ever in the Metrodome in 2009 was a game 163 playoff against the Yankees as well. I went to that one. That's the only one of these games I've seen in person. It doesn't actually count on their postseason losing streak, but it was the last game in Metrodome history. And I saw that one as well. There was a streaker in that game. He got tackled naked in the outfield right in front of us. I thought it was great. So that would be like 19 games, but if we count that one, we can't count the Detroit one in 2009. And I need all the Moonlighters cheering for a Twins victory. Let's snap the streak. Let's get out of the wild card. Let's get into the divisional round. Let's get into the ALCS. Let's make magic happen in Minneapolis this year. Have a great week, Moonlighters, and go Twins.
It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. It's a pretty good program, broadcasting to the heartland. Sports stories for the everyman. It's Moonlight Graham, yeah. Please follow us on Instagram. You're loving us on Twitter too. You download every pod we do. It's Moonlight